Hello, and welcome back to another episode of my series analyzing the character of Bojack Horseman. Today we'll be covering the climax of our story, the view from halfway down. Over the last two episodes of Bojack Horseman, we revisit all of the major characters one last time. Well, sort of, you'll see what I mean. View from halfway down focuses on the dead, and Nice While It Lasted focuses on the living. We mirror our transition from past to future and from contemplating death to contemplating life, as the show and the season do as a whole. Most importantly, the two episodes work together and most clearly express what I've been saying the series is about since the beginning. Bojack Horseman is a coin. On one side is a question of the pursuit of meaning, and on the other, a question of the pursuit of change. The two sides are inseparable. And as the coin flips, they blend together, with the show's ultimate meaning becoming a perfect blend of the whole. The view from halfway down opens with Bojack and a young Sarah Lynn walking up to Beatrice's house. He's holding a hydrangea. The flower in Japanese tradition is symbolic of heartfelt apology and understanding. Fitting. We're immediately met with two conflicts. There is a bird in the house, a common symbol of impending death, although usually with a black bird rather than a red one, and there's a strange black liquid dripping. The first thing it drips on is the hydrangeas. A liquid that will reveal itself to be tangible death is falling upon and corrupting the symbol of Bojack's understanding and apology he brought to a party with all of his dead friends. Fitting. The episode creates a lifetime as its core structure looks back on what life was and what made it meaningful. We open with Bojack chasing the bird, a seemingly whimsical hijinks with the horse and around theme playing over it. Sarah Lynn here is a kid, and as the episode progresses, she rapidly shifts in age, reflecting the period of Bojack's life the episode is assessing. We move to a dinner party with Bojack at the head of the table, directly under the black drip, with the guests positioned relatively according to their importance to Bojack. Sarah Lynn, ultimate guilt and lost potential, and Beatrice, the seeds of his self-loathing and brokenness, sit next to him. His best friend Herb, the uncle whose death set all the events of the show into motion, are next up. And Corduroy Jackson, who's mostly here just to express one point, and as a bit of comic relief, which this episode severely needs, sits the furthest. In this section, we see Sarah Lynn as a young adult, reflective of Bojack's middle age before the show's timeline. The dinner conversation focuses on what creates meaning in life, instead of focusing on subject, as most of the show does. Here, we zero in on the underlying element of it. They debate sacrifice, achievement, whether helping others is selfish, and end on Bojack expressing his answer of potential. Sarah Lynn and Corduroy conflict over whether achievement with the inspiration of others as a byproduct is self-serving. Herb contends that it doesn't matter either way, as the results matter more than the intention. Why deprive ourselves of feeling good? Very reminiscent of season 3's conflicts with ambition. Beatrice contends that Sarah Lynn's sacrifice for her performances is inherently meaningful. Sacrifice must be inherently meaningful, or else what did all of the loss that we and those we love incurred in its name actually mean? Of course, this is rooted in her familial trauma, and we have the focal point of it, her brother, right next to her. And the show's already given its answer to this. This is Diane's character arc. Good Damage, her character climax, establishes that sacrifice isn't inherently meaningful in a sort of emotional sunk cost fallacy. The trauma and pain that you suffered doesn't have to be for something. Sometimes it's just pain. But in turn, you don't have to validate it. Crackerjack actually doubles down on this. He paid the ultimate sacrifice for his country in probably the most just war in its history, but he didn't kill anyone aside from friendly fire. He didn't liberate any concentration camps. His sacrifice was ultimately for nothing, and he knows it. He affirms Diane, loss, pain, and sacrifice are not inherently meaningful or for anything. Our second discussion is that meaning is created through helping people. Bojack's first answer to the question of the best part of his life in a game they play, best part, worst part, is teaching the acting class. Herb enthusiastically agrees. Helping others is an excellent path to meaning. This cycles back to the question of intent and being self-serving. Herb also gives us a microcosm of the episode, aligning its structure and point. He was going to kill himself, but the Knicks were having a really good season, and he wanted to see where it went. But what's important here is his answer when Bojack asks, well, what if they weren't? Of course, he would have just found something else. He goes to Machu Picchu and he finds peace. During this, Secretariat arrives, a weird amalgamation of Bojack's dad and his idol. He immediately positions himself as the opposition to Herb in this argument, claiming that Herb simply had no follow-through, and that fear rather than hope must have been his reason not for going through with the suicide. This is clearly emblematic of Bojack's current situation in this episode. He's in the middle of a more or less suicide attempt as we speak. Bojack's attempted suicide a few times before over the course of the show, but because of his defining traits of hopefulness and love for life's potential, he always leaves himself an out. When he drives into the pool during the Oscar party, he has everyone at the party who could save him. When he lets go of the wheel driving at the end of season 3, the scene with all of the horses running in the desert, he has his brakes to save him. And now he has Diane on the phone, or so he thinks. The divided attitudes of Herb and Secretariat, his best friend who fought for his life, and his idol who chose to end it. A perfect balance of the war going on in his own head. Over the course of the dinner, Sarah Lynn morphs into her 30-year-old form we see during most of the show's run, indicating the conversation spans across Bojack's middle-aged life, bleeding into the show's timeline. She also moves to the other side of the table, showing, visually, the rift between them that plagued their adulthoods. Beatrice says it's time for the show, somewhere Bojack has never made it, as he always wakes up. This is a recurring dream of his, but this time, curiously, he doesn't wake up. This brings me to the single most critical thing to understand about this episode. This is all in Bojack's head. There is only one character in this episode. This is a monologue. All the other characters here are a reflection of Bojack's understanding of them. They're representative of conflicts in his own mind as he contends with himself. Herb and Secretariat's conflict over suicide and the guests' holistic conversation of life's meaning aren't just parallel to Bojack's thoughts. They are Bojack's thoughts. This is one of the best narrative tools I've come across and is featured regularly within the stories I think the most highly of. It's a rapid and deep form of character development where you can demonstrate the multifaceted conflicts within the characters, provide context and layers to ideas through the other characters, representing them while making use of each's characterization, and have it all converge on a single, very dense point. The show is consistent with this in the portrayal of the other characters, too. Corduroy and Crackerjack, the characters Bojack knows the least, don't have any further detail into their life outside of the high-level bullet points Bojack knows, and they act in accordance with what we could assume is their personality. Even their performances later in the show are extremely minimal. Crackerjack even says he doesn't remember things that he would obviously remember during the course of the conversation. But regardless of the logic of it, this is the clear intent and the view that makes the episode and the show as a whole the most meaningful. So now, onto the show. Each person during the show gives a performance reflective of their most meaningful synergy with Bojack. We start with Sarah Lynn performing her rendition of Don't Stop Dancin'. It symbolizes a morphing of Bojack's errant advice to a young Sarah Lynn that she can never stop performing for the audience, and is now positioned as a song to tell Bojack to keep going, more reflective of his conversation with Todd in the next episode. His advice of a constant seeking for external validation for her ultimately led to continued failure and lack of happiness in her life. And it's fitting that she's expressing this in her final goodbye to him. But of course, her being a character representing his understanding of her, reflects his understanding of his failure in his fatherly role to her. As the song drowns out, she stares into a door that appears containing nothing but darkness. The door is the other void, the incomprehensible emptiness of death.
Don't stop dancing.
Bojack Horseman doesn't mince words on its view of death. The symbolism here is terrifying, and Herb puts it bluntly later when he tells Bojack,
"Oh, Bojack, no. There is no other side. This is it."
A gut punch of a line for any mortal person watching this show. But Sarah Lynn has made her last transformation. She's gone. We're now in the timeline of the second half of the show, Bojack's active self-reflection. Watching Sarah Lynn die again increases his level of panic, clearly understanding what's happening here, that this is a manifestation of his own mind as he drowns in the pool. The drowning metaphor I mentioned in the free churro section of my analysis, that's been a recurring motif throughout the show, finally comes to a head. Noticing his terror, Secretariat, or Butterscotch, invites him out for a smoke. The two father figures, in a unique blend, criticize Herb's idea of ultimate peace and double down on Secretariat's decision of suicide. As for him, life was a one-dimensional path of meaning. Running was his meaning. Because this is Bojack's inner mind, what this actually is him trying to comfort himself in the decision, inviting himself out for a smoke to escape it all. Pretending to agree with his choice as he is now halfway down. Secretariat succeeded in what I've outlined this analysis as, finding a path to meaning. But as it's taken away, so too is his reason to live. He switches to the Butterscotch persona, and we get what I view as an extension of the parental understanding and forgiveness demonstrated in Free Churro. Beatrice was more connected to Bojack and ultimately lived longer, so she was a more constant force, but they really represent the same thing. Here, Bojack, in that this is a monologue and his mind is creating his dad's words, says all the things Bojack always wanted to hear. His dad loved him so much. He was terrified of him knowing it. The walls around his heart that Bojack knows all too well, as he has them too, was the real reason he could never feel his father's warmth. In Free Churro, he explains how he knew his parents were drowning with him, and here he fully affirms that. Do we know for sure if Butterscotch felt this way? Of course not. This isn't really Butterscotch. But it doesn't matter. Bojack validates it for himself. It's true and meaningful because it is to him. Internal validation. They return, and it's Secretariat's turn. We arrive at what many consider to be the best moment of the entire show, the titular view from halfway down speech.
The weak breeze whispers nothing. The water screams sublime. His feet.
In a heart-wrenching, awe-inspiring voice acting performance by Will Arnett, we watch the facade of affirmation in the suicide decision, the opposition to Herb's philosophy, completely shatter. He describes the mental clarity that comes midway down on a suicidal leap, where it's too late, a metaphor for the current situation in this episode, and really Bojack's character as a whole. He's really been halfway down the entire show. It's easy to be consistently self-destructive or to consider suicide, as Bojack has been, until you're faced with the immediate reality of death, its nothingness, its purposelessness, and its permanency. Within all his misery, Bojack has always been a deeply hopeful person. Hope is tied to change. Hope for a better future is hard, but he consistently has it. He only gives up in moments of weakness, as this whole episode is. He expresses it well in Free Churro in the comparison to the show Becker, a comparison to show his hopeful nature. Even knowing there was probably no hope for the show to be good, he kept hoping, just as he hopes for his life to be good. Just as with his parents, even though he knew there was little chance they'd ever be close or have the close, well-connected relationship he always wanted, as he says,
"Stupidest goddamn part of you was still holding on to that chance."
But it isn't stupid. It's the most human thing in him. This part of Bojack is what's clashing thoroughly with the finality of death in this episode. It's the antithesis of death's permanent answer of no. It's an impenetrable sense that somewhere, someday, he can be happy as long as he's alive. The door creeps forward, and Secretariat becomes increasingly frantic. Herb tells him to find his peace, but he never did. The door abruptly catches up and claims him. It's a rattling thing to watch, and one of the most powerful, life-affirming, and anti-suicide moments ever created. Herb, symbolically, and what he represents in this episode, has won. In accordance with his parental acceptance, Beatrice next performs the dance that we heard as an inspiration to Bojack in Free Churro, before she too is claimed by the void. The moment of awe and beauty he repeatedly saw in his mother, the glimpse of a memory that completely detached him from his scathing eulogy, and maybe the symbol of his implicit closeness with her in the last thing he visualizes in this, his final goodbye to her. Herb has been emceeing the whole time, in accordance with his role in life as someone to guide Bojack. Now, they're the only two left. He climactically introduces Bojack for his turn to die. He speaks the quote I showed earlier, and he disappears, leaving Bojack alone. Bojack, having thoroughly convinced himself against longing for death, runs away from the creeping sludge. We watch a hellish scene as Bojack, with pure terror on his face, tries anything to escape the impending void. He eventually finds a hallway full of hydrangeas, and despite there being no sludge, he avoids the path due to its intricacy in its vines. This single moment is effectively the whole show. Even with the boundless fear of what he knows as eternal nothingness scraping at his heels, he does not venture through the path laced with symbols of his genuine understanding and apology. I have not said anything like this yet throughout my entire multi-part analysis, and this will be the only time I will, as it's a large step to make such a lofty claim. But if the hydrangeas had been placed in the halls in the preceding shot of him running across the dinner table, I think this episode would be tangibly better. Watching Bojack flee his end while the metaphoric removal of potential erodes away symbols of his apology and longing for change, them no longer being options for him, death being the only thing that can kill his commitment to be better, would be a phenomenally creative display of what the action of this episode means for Bojack's character. How fitting the contrast between the two symbols juxtaposed with Bojack's love for potential. Nonetheless, the hydrangea hallway is still an excellent inclusion. And I guess we did see the drip of the ooze of death corrupting the hydrangeas earlier on, so maybe my change isn't a complete overhaul. And although Bojack doesn't take the path here, we see that it exists. and it's important that we do, that it is the one path away from the unstoppable creeping of the ooze, that it always has been. And in the next episode, he will walk this hallway. He calls Diane the most meaningful person left alive to him. The phone call is the culmination of what the episode and what the View from Halfway Down speech has meant. Nothing inherently matters. Our self-loathing for our mistakes is meaningless, and the path we take towards meaning don't always lead us to it, and certainly not linearly towards one answer, as Secretariat thought. Bojack chooses to spend what he believes are his last moments denying the self-loathing of mistakes and enjoying talking to someone he loves. And that's really what life is. Not any one path to an answer or a sense of completeness, but sharing moments with the people you love before it all inevitably ends.
If it doesn't matter, can I stay on the phone with you at least?
Okay.
This rides on his final answer during Best Part, Worst Part. The best part of his life was when he was young, figuring it out, with countless paths forward, with people he cared about, the potential to be a better, happier person, and the pursuit of it through an endless number of paths. This is his unbreakable hope. But the black tar claims him, and we hear a flatlining heartbeat monitor as the episode fades out. The first time I watched this, I was pissed. If Bojack died here, and I say this as someone deeply connected to the show for many years after now writing a 14,000 word analysis I'm uploading to YouTube to share my love of it with everybody else, if Bojack died here, the show would suck. The show would, instead of being the wide-scoped, psychologically stunning examination of life's meaning and the potential of change with a powerful, affirmative climax, it would degrade into a warning story of a shitty man relapsing, denying his truthful, meaningful change. I guess you could interpret The View from Halfway Down positively, and maybe due to my connection to the show, I would be drawn towards finding a interpretation of the show where I derive insight in what Bojack realizes in this penultimate episode, but it would undeniably be a worse ending with a lot of question marks on what we ultimately have as our meaning. A lot of people have theorized that Bojack actually did die too, and that the last episode is more of a dream. But between the show pretty explicitly showing that not to be the case, like why the hell would the last episode take place at Princess Carolyn and Judah's wedding? How would Bojack know that? And the creator saying he never even considered this. It's not only safe to say, but imperative to say that Bojack lives. And thank God for that. Now we move on to our finale, our resolution, our answers. Nice while it lasted. And this episode 2 will be getting its own video soon. I think there are a lot of interesting details to explore, and I'm excited to share my thoughts on it. It's the best episode in my opinion, and I hope, even if you don't agree, maybe I can shed some light on it for you. But for now, I hope you've enjoyed hearing about the masterpiece that is The View from Halfway Down. Maybe you learned something new, or even just renewed appreciation for a stunning moment in art. Either way, thank you so much for watching. I appreciate you being here. Like the video, drop a comment with your thoughts, and subscribe to the channel for more. Thank you, and see you soon.